thank you for being here. Today, we are going to talk about how to create REST APIs with PowerShell Universal. Some of you have been probably attend the band readers session on this morning. Could we just make a quick poll? How many of you have been in this session on this morning? Okay, only a few people. Okay, so you will see the difference. It's not the same approach. It's another way. I would say it's an easiest way to create REST APIs. So first, let's thank our sponsors. So without our sponsors, this event would have been possible. So make this applause for them. So my name is Arnaud Petitjean. I come from France, from Bordeaux. I've been a PowerShell MVP for 10 years, but I'm not an active MVP anymore. I'm also the founder of the French-speaking PowerShell community back in 2006. And I also created my own company 4 years ago when I do PowerShell trainings and PowerShell consultancy. I'm also a books author. I wrote 6 books, and I participated to collective books in English. But I write mostly in French. So let's dig into the topic. I don't have a lot of slides, just a few of them, just to explain you the context. So what's a REST API? So REST stands for Representational State Transfer. It is a way to exchange data with the server from any client, basically. The principle is communication is stateless. That means the server never keeps tracks of the context. So the context belongs to the client that needs to send the context at any request. So the advantages of REST APIs is it's very easy to scale because you can deploy as much as API you want. This way, it's good for fault tolerance, and the beauty is it's quite easy to implement. REST is not the standard, but it's a software architecture, and the web is based on REST. So basically, the data you will exchange with the REST API is more or less the same than the one a browser used to interact with servers. So a little bit of terminology. So when we design REST APIs, we have to create a CRUD. Create, read, update, and delete methods are the most common methods we have to implement. It exists also other methods, but these ones are the most used. We talk also about routing. A route is a URL to explain the path to the data to gather. So you can, here are 2 examples of 2 URLs. The one is to get some posts, and the other one is OMDB API is a database from movies to get information about movies. So here I ask information about a movie where the title could be Batman. So in REST terminology and with the CRUD functions, we associate a REST method to a web service. For example, when we want to create something, we will use a post method. If we want to read, we will create a get method. We want to update something, we could use put. Sometimes some developer prefers to use patch. It's up to the developer to choose one or the other method. And if you want to delete an object, in general, we use delete. So the principle is the client generates a URL and sends the URL, and the server processes the URL, and we get text. In general, it's JSON, but it could also be XML files. But the return is always a text data, in general, JSON. Why JSON? Because JSON is easy to learn, and it's very concise compared to an XML file. So JSON is lightweight. Few other examples of GET URLs. In this URL, we are interacting with a service which is a library, basically. And we are getting information about the user with ID 1. So this is a natural URL we could use to query a web service. But we could also use a query string with a question mark and a named parameter. Here it's ID equal 1. So these two calls are exactly the same. It's another way to create a route, but in general, both are implemented by a REST API. If I want all the books for user 1, I could naturally write something like this: user/1/book. In general, we don't use plural in URLs, but sometimes you could find plurals on some APIs. It's up to the user, but it's up to the developer, but there are some best practices. And if you want to filter more, we could use this kind of call to get the book, which has the ID 1 to 3 of user 1. So all of these are just simple routes to a resource. Sorry. And if we want to delete a user, we will commonly use this kind of route where we define the route and we just call the delete method instead of get. So these are the principles, the basic principles. So I'm going to explain you how to create these routes and how to implement them with PowerShell. But before, just another schema, a little schema. So imagine you're the user and you will use, for instance, invoke REST method, but we could also use invoke web request. It's up to you. So the principle is you interact with a web service, a PowerShell web service. For example, imagine it's PowerShell Universal, but that could be another one. It exists some others, like Polaris or Pod. And this web service interacts with PowerShell, and you can execute what PowerShell script you want and interact with any resource, local resource, or remote resources. This is the principle. So now let's start the demo. So I have some virtual machines running on my computer. I have one domain controller, one server, which is a member, which is a Windows Server 2022, and I have one Windows client. So I installed PowerShell Universal on my server, which is a domain member. It's just a basic installation. In this session, I assume everybody knows PowerShell Universal, but maybe some of you don't know. Just to be quick, PowerShell Universal is like a framework, a web framework, but it's much than that. It has been created by Adam Driscoll, which is a well-known PowerShell MVP in the community. And by the past, this product was called PowerShell Universal Dashboard. But PowerShell Universal Dashboard was not an appropriate name because PowerShell Universal can do much more than just presenting dashboards. So you can create REST APIs and create web applications with PowerShell Universal. So what I did on my server is just download the product and install and click next. That's it. Just to mention, PowerShell Universal is not as two versions. One free version, which is a community version, which has a lot of functionalities, but not the enterprise features like authentication and authorizations. Okay, so let's dig in PowerShell Universal. So when you install PowerShell Universal, it's installed on port 5000 by default, but you can change it anywhere at any time or during the installation time. So by default, the login is admin and password is admin. So you arrive on this admin console, and on your left, you have a menu with plenty of options, but what interests us today is the API entry over there. So this is where we will define our endpoints. In the automation menu, you have the ability to schedule scripts and to interact with scripts you want to with a GUI. In user interface, this is where you could create web pages and create web applications. But for now, let's go into the API and endpoint. So if we want to create an endpoint, we could just click here, create new endpoint. And in the URL, you type, let's say, hello. Then we are going to edit details. This is a script we want to execute when a user will call our root. The root is just hello. So we could just output hello world. I click save. I have the ability, if I want, to execute right away my API just to test if it works. I can click run, and I get the output. So for now, I'm going to copy and paste this PowerShell line and try if it works. But just before, I'm going to just disable authentication because we'll go deeper into this topic in a few minutes. I click Save Settings. So I go back here, I copy. I can open a PowerShell and just paste and see what happened. Hello world. This is our first PowerShell API. So I'm done. Thank you for today. No, don't leave. I'm going to show you another example. So I could either create endpoints inside of the GUI, inside of the remote console, or I could also use Visual Studio Code where you can, here I have downloaded a PowerShell extension, which is the PowerShell Universal extension. And if you click here, you see a new pane on the left with a connection. So I had to define just a token to authenticate myself against the PowerShell server. And I can see my APIs. You see, I clicked refresh, and I can see, hello. This is, if I click here, I can edit it right away. Or I could edit a file which hosts all the APIs. I could do this from here, open endpoint. And this is the PowerShell code that is executed for the API. So I could create, in this PowerShell script, all my APIs. But I won't do this now because here there is a little bug that and it doesn't work. So I could do this, and I could edit remotely the file. And we are going to create a new API. And this one, we could say, who am I? And call the who am I executable, and see the credential we are currently using. So I just have to press save, Control S, and my API is ready. As you can see, it returns into authority system. So the PowerShell Universal Server is running by default with a local system account. Okay. I could just create a new one quickly, which is PS version, just to see which PowerShell version the server is running. PowerShell Universal takes care of converting the data into JSON. So I don't need to convert explicitly the data, the objects, into JSON. It's automatically done. So I could do this. So I have a new root, PS version. And as you can see, I have a PowerShell object back. Okay, so when in PowerShell Universal, you can define some endpoint, some environment. An environment defines the system environment where your endpoint is currently running. So let's see our endpoints. So we have here are all our endpoints, and this is the one I've just created. So I can click Edit Properties, and here you see the method and you see the environment. By default, it's running, as we can see here, PowerShell 7.3.1, because PowerShell, this version is embedded into PowerShell Universal. So you don't need to install it explicitly on your server. But I could say, whenever a user calls my API, I want to use PowerShell, Windows PowerShell instead of PowerShell core. So I could say this. I save. I recall my root. And as you can see, now the PS version is PowerShell.5.1. So just by changing the environment of my API, it changes the PowerShell version that executes my endpoint. Okay, so now we are going to create a new endpoint that will get the Active Directory users, because I'm using an Active Directory. So I can create a new endpoint. We could call it AD user, which implements a get method and will search for the users inside of a specific organizational unit. Sorry for my accent. Okay, so let's try this endpoint. So I click Save. PowerShell Universal detects the change in the file and reload. Yes, thank you. So now let's try our new route, AD user. Let's try with a format table. Yes, this is better. So on my Active Directory and in my specific organizational unit, I have 4 users. Okay, so now I would like to implement a parameter to filter out, just to get only one user and not every users of my OU. So to do this, we just have to use this technique. We can use a colon just right after the root, and automatically this parameter will be seen as a variable inside of my endpoint. So I can use this SAM account name variable, as you can see here, -identity, $SAM account name. So let's try this second endpoint. So I can now use the command line just to specify in the URL a user, and it returns only one user. Okay, so this was one technique, but there is another one, which is with query strings. I could use query strings in order to implement another way of passing parameters. This way, I would like to implement this parameter, SAM account name, because to me, it's much easier to read than the previous method. So like this, it doesn't work because it's not implemented. So it returns everything. So to implement this, there is mostly nothing to do. Here I created a parameter, but creating a parameter is not mandatory. You could just do this, which means just do nothing, and every single query string, every single parameter you will use on the URL will be automatically collected by PowerShell Universal. So let's modify the endpoint file. Okay. So let's try. Let's give another try. So now it works. So we have both ways to call our APIs. Our API either using this syntax or using this syntax. Personally, I prefer the latest. Okay. So now we want to implement another method, which is post. With this post method, we will create a user. So this way, I'm gonna create a parameter with a parameter block with 3 parameters: a SAM account name, a name, and a surname. And I'm gonna use new AD user and map my parameters with the query string that will be automatically translated for me. So let's do this. Click Save. But to call this API, I have to provide a body with a body parameter to my invoke REST method call. So I can use a hash table like this one and to create John Smith. So let's do it. Access denied. So access is denied. It's because using a local system account is not enough to create Active Directory users. So I have to do something more. I have to create a new endpoint which will execute like a run as. So we are going to create a credential to store a credential in PowerShell Universal and to create a new environment with this credential. So let's do it. So we could do this from settings, environments. So I can edit one environment just to copy and paste one information. So create new environment. So let's call this environment, for example, AD administration. I give it a description. This is the path to the PowerShell. So it could be PowerShell 7 or Windows PowerShell. Here I'm gonna use Windows PowerShell. And here I can click Add Run as Credential. And I can create a variable. It's so it's a secret. So I can admin service account. So it's a PS credential. So you haven't seen it's the administrator domain account. It shouldn't be this way. But for the demo, it's gonna be okay. I can select a vault. I'm gonna use secret store, PSU secret store. So now I have a variable, which is a secret. So I'm going back in my environment. It lost my environment, so I have to start again. AD administration, the path to the PowerShell executable. And here, credential, AD admin service account. I could specify modules to load, but here, the Active Directory module is installed on my server, so it's on the path, so there's no problem to load it. And now my environment is created, so I have to assign this environment to my endpoint. So these are all my endpoints. Edit properties, environment, AD administration. Okay. Okay, let's try it once again. No answer, so it worked. So let's check this out. Oh, I haven't implemented. So let's see, some account name. John Smith. Here it is. John Smith has been created using my post root API. So that's not that complicated, isn't it? Sometimes an endpoint can fail. For example, I can try to call a second time my endpoint, not this one, but the one who creates my user. And this way, I get an error message. But I can customize the error message and the error code I receive. I'm going to show you. So here, I have to create a try-catch block and execute my new AD user in a try, and with error action stop. And when the catch is triggered, I have to use new PSU API response with a status code. And in the body here, I'm going to rethrow the exception. So I can change a little bit my code this way. Let's see what happens. Now I have it's more concise, and I received, if I use get error, I can see the status code that has been returned by the endpoint. So 501. So normally, I should also create a delete method and a put method to change a user, but I'm running out of time. I'm going to show you how to secure an endpoint with a token. So to use an endpoint with a token, I need to create an identity and to give a token to this identity in PowerShell Universal. So let's create an identity in the security pane. Identity. I'm going to call it API user. It's not a local account. So I created my API user. So now I can go in API, in token, create a new app token for my API user. I will assign a user role in order to be able to call my API. I can specify an expiration duration for my token. So let's say 60 days. So I have to copy the token. But now I have a token. I need to activate the authentication on my endpoint. So I'm going to just activate the authentication for the post route, which is the more important to secure. So let's click Edit, Authentication. I have to specify a role. So a typical role for this kind of work is user. Click OK. And now my endpoint is secured. So if I try to create a new, so let's say it's Bartek Smith, a new user. If I try to call my API this way, now it's unauthorized. So I have to use headers with authorization equal bearer and paste my token. Oh. An attempt was made to add an object. The name is already used. That's weird. Ah, it's the name. Okay, I have to change the name as well. Let's call it test. Okay. Okay, now it's working. It worked. So let's check this out. So we are going to change this API. I want to return everyone. Filter star. Okay. So now, oh yes, it returned me every users from all my Active Directory. But I can see that my test user, Bartek Smith, has been created using a token. Last thing I wanted to show you is we could also authenticate our endpoints with integrated Active Directory, basically with your Windows account. It's very easy to do this. In PowerShell Universal, you have to go in the authentication and add a new authentication method. So I'm going to add Windows. And this way, I could just use another way to create a user. Let's try this post. So this time, I won't use my account token, but use default credentials. And because I'm using HTTP instead of HTTPS, because I haven't taken the time to to secure my endpoint with a certificate, I have to use allow unencrypted authentication. So my account has been authenticated, but I don't have the authorization to create and to use this endpoint. So I won't show you how to do this because we are running out of time, but I have something else to show you, but we could discuss that later after the conference if you want to. The Swagger view. The Swagger view is really interesting. So when you deal with REST APIs, sometimes you want to have a nice looking documentation. And with this functionality, it's possible to have a nice view of all your endpoints. So this is PowerShell Universal Management API because you can interact with PowerShell Universal with these specific REST APIs, but you have the endpoints we just created, which are just there. So if I click Hello, I can see my endpoint. I can try it out there, execute, and it returns Hello World. I can try get AD user, try it out, execute. So this is an interesting way of showing documentation, a sort of documentation, which is guessed automatically from the roots, you see. And we can also test our roots this way. Because if I click here, it detected the query strings parameters, and I have the ability to put values. Yes, a last thing I can show you is how to improve the view is using a regular PowerShell help inside of your endpoint. So here I have defined a synopsis, a description, and the parameter for, let's say, this endpoint. I just copy and paste the help, save, refresh my page. And if I go back here, as you can see, get a specific user or a collection of users, and I have a help there that was not present before. So that's it for the demo. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have some questions, we have time for a few questions. Thank you for your attention. Yes? The question is, are you using what you are showing in a production environment, or is it just theoretical? Yes, I do use PowerShell Universal in production. And if you want to see what I did, come to my next session on Thursday at 11 a.m. Another question? No? Okay, thank you. Yeah. Yes, the question is there a versioning of the code you use inside of PowerShell Universal? Yes, there is a versioning. You can configure PowerShell Universal with Git. It's already embedded, and it's all is in Git. It's just natural. Thank you very much.